June 22, 1941, 03:15 a.m. Bug River Line, Eastern Front. A Soviet sentry dies at 300 meters a few minutes earlier. Fog blankets the fields. German infantry advance in silence. A Soviet sentry scans the darkness. His breath hangs in the cold air. 300 meters away, movement catches his eye. He squints, tries to focus. His heart pounds. Then he sees it. A German soldier, standing upright, rifle raised. Not a sniper, no ghillie suit, no elite training. Just a regular infantryman with a scope so small it looks like a toy. The sentry freezes. Impossible. At this distance, in this light, with iron sights, he shouldn't be visible. One breath, one pull, one clean shot through the fog. The sentry falls. He never understood how he was seen. His killer uses a scope professional marksmen rejected as worthless, too weak, too narrow, a joke. Just 1.5 times magnification, barely stronger than the naked eye. But this toy is about to spread across entire German divisions. And when it does, every ordinary soldier gains eyes that pierce the half-light. Every squad becomes a nest of mid-range killers. The strategic calculus of Operation Barbarossa shifts in ways Soviet commanders can't yet comprehend. The weapon? The ZF-41. Mocked, dismissed, hated by elite snipers. Yet, in the hands of regular infantry, it's rewriting the rules of engagement, transforming anonymous riflemen into precision threats at ranges where iron sights see only ghosts. One small optic, 100,000 rifles. One quiet revolution that turns the tide before anyone realizes the battlefield has changed. The sentry on the Bug River never saw what killed him. He only felt the impact. Then, darkness. His mistake wasn't poor vigilance. It was assuming ordinary soldiers couldn't reach him at that distance. That assumption just became fatal, for thousands more to follow. What happens when a weapon everyone despised becomes the tool that redefines infantry lethality across an entire theater of war? Eastern Europe, summer 1941. The steppe stretches endlessly. No cover, no concealment. Just open ground where distance decides who lives and who becomes a statistic. German infantry advance into this killing field with a fatal disadvantage. Their Kar 98K rifles are excellent, reliable, accurate to 800 meters, in theory. In practice, iron sights blur beyond 200 meters. At 250, targets become shadows. At 300, guesswork replaces marksmanship. A German rifleman crouches in tall grass. His pulse hammers. Across the field, Soviet positions. Maybe 280 meters, maybe 320. He can't tell. He aims, fires, misses. The Soviets know this weakness. They've learned to exploit it with ruthless efficiency. Machine gun nests positioned at exactly 300 meters. Snipers at 400. Just beyond the blur line, close enough to kill, far enough to remain invisible. German soldiers die without ever seeing their executioners. Supply lines stretch thin. Ammunition must be rationed. Every wasted shot at an unclear target isn't just a miss. It's one less round when you finally see the enemy clearly. The math is brutal. High-power sniper scopes exist. 4 times Zeiss optics that turn distant figures into clear targets. But Germany has fewer than 10,000 across the entire Eastern Front. 1 per company if they're lucky. Most units have none. Elite snipers hoard them jealously, and elite snipers number in the hundreds, while ordinary riflemen number in the hundreds of thousands. Commanders submit desperate requests. Our men are blind past 200 meters. The Soviets are slaughtering them at 300. The response arrives in wooden crates. Soldiers pry them open, unwrap oiled paper, hold up small metal tubes. The ZF-41, 1.5 times magnification. Barely stronger than squinting. A narrow field of view that makes scanning difficult. One soldier peers through it, laughs bitterly. They sent us a toy. Another spits. This is what High Command thinks will save us? Sniper instructors examine the optic, shake their heads, issue official dismissals. Inadequate for long-range work, not suitable for designated marksmen, not approved for tactical use. The reports are scathing. The ZF-41 cannot compete with proper sniper optics. Recommend rejection. But something doesn't appear in those reports. The alternative. What happens when you reject the imperfect solution? When you demand perfection that doesn't exist in sufficient numbers? Soldiers keep dying at 300 meters, blind, helpless, firing at shapes they can barely perceive. Field commanders face an impossible choice: issue a worthless optic to thousands, or leave those thousands with nothing but iron sights and hope. On the Bug River line, some units make their choice quietly, against doctrine, against recommendations. They mount the ZF-41 anyway, and at dawn, when fog drapes the killing fields, those soldiers discover something the experts missed. 1. 5 times magnification doesn't make distant enemies crystal clear, but it makes them clear enough. Clear enough to see a face at 300 meters. Clear enough to aim with confidence instead of hope. Clear enough to fire first. And in the brutal arithmetic of infantry combat, clear enough is the difference between going home and being buried where you fall. The stakes couldn't be higher. Without extending the reach of ordinary soldiers, the entire offensive risks drowning in its own casualties. Speed means nothing if every advance bleeds the infantry white. The ZF-41 represents a fragile compromise nobody wanted. Not elegant, not powerful, not impressive. Just barely adequate. But, on the Eastern Front, barely adequate might be exactly what survival looks like. The question wasn't whether the ZF-41 was perfect, it was whether imperfect vision was better than none at all. In 1942, the pressure becomes unbearable. Sniper schools issue formal rejections. Training officers write scathing evaluations. The ZF-41 is inadequate for designated marksman work, not approved, not acceptable, not worthy of professional use. Elite sharpshooters refuse to touch it. They demand real equipment. 4 times Zeiss glass, precision turrets, tools that match their skill. And they have a point. On paper, they're right. But the front doesn't run on paper. Mid-range casualties surge, 250 to 400 meters, the killing zone where iron sights fail and hope becomes strategy. A squad pins down behind rubble. Soviet machine gun, 320 meters. The gunner knows the range, knows German rifles can't reach him accurately. He fires in controlled bursts, methodical, patient. German soldiers return fire blindly. 50 rounds, 60, burning through precious ammunition, hitting nothing. One man dies, then another. Blood pools in the dirt. The survivors pull back. The position holds. The Soviets advance. This scene repeats across the entire Eastern Front, hundreds of times, every day. Soviet commanders recognize the pattern. They adapt. Machine guns at 300 meters become standard doctrine. Rifle positions at 350, perfectly calibrated to exploit German blindness. And it works, devastatingly. Meanwhile, production of the ZF-41 accelerates. In 1942, factories stamp out 50,000 units. Assembly lines run day and night. By 1943, another 50,000. Over 100,000 total flooding toward the front. But distribution remains chaotic, political, irrational. Some divisions receive thousands, others receive none. Units equipped with the optic report reduced casualties. Units without it keep bleeding. Yet, skepticism hardens into doctrine. Official channels classify the ZF-41 as auxiliary equipment only, not primary, not essential, not trusted. In Stalingrad's frozen ruins, this bureaucratic dismissal becomes a death sentence. Urban combat, shattered buildings, sight lines that shift from 30 meters to 300 in seconds. Iron sights prove worse than useless. They provide false confidence in conditions where nothing is clear. A German soldier clears a building, steps into an alley, scans the wreckage across the street. 180 meters, movement in a window, maybe a Soviet rifleman, maybe debris shifting. He hesitates, squints, can't confirm. The muzzle flash answers his question. He falls before he ever fires. His squad finds the ZF-41 in his pack, still wrapped, still unused. He didn't trust it, believed the instructors who called it worthless. That belief cost him everything. Allied bombing intensifies. Supply lines fracture. Replacements arrive undertrained, under-equipped, unprepared. Training cycles collapse from 12 weeks to 6, then 4. Some soldiers reach the front with barely 3 weeks of preparation. They're handed rifles, pointed toward the enemy, expected to survive against veterans. Without magnification, they don't last long. Every week without a scalable solution drains more than ground. It drains the will to advance, the confidence to engage, the belief that survival is possible. Layer upon layer of unbroken strain, fuel shortages ground reconnaissance aircraft, air superiority shifts decisively toward the Allies. The skies become hostile, intelligence evaporates. German infantry advance blind, into villages they can't scout, across fields they haven't mapped, against positions they can't identify until bullets start flying. And, at 300 meters, those bullets arrive before German soldiers can even see who's shooting. The mathematics of attrition turn brutal. Germany has hundreds of elite snipers, thousands of sniper-quality optics, but hundreds of thousands of riflemen who need to see beyond iron sight range. Even if every sniper killed 10 enemies per day, impossible, they couldn't cover the deficiencies of an entire infantry force fighting blind. The gap widens. The casualties mount. The desperation grows. Then, quietly, field reports begin showing anomalies. Units equipped with ZF-41 optics, despite official dismissal, report measurably fewer mid-range casualties. Not dramatic reductions, not miraculous, just consistent, repeatable improvements. 5% fewer killed, 8% fewer wounded, 12% more effective suppressive fire at 250 to 400 meters. Small numbers, almost insignificant, until you multiply them across divisions, across weeks, across the entire theater. Then, those small numbers become thousands of lives. Thousands of soldiers who see the enemy 3 seconds sooner, fire 5 seconds faster, survive the engagement when they shouldn't have. 3 seconds, 5 seconds. The difference between covering your squad's retreat and being overrun, between identifying a machine gun nest and walking into its kill zone, between going home and being buried in a mass grave marked only with a wooden cross. Regimental commanders take notice. They read the reports, study the statistics, draw uncomfortable conclusions. The experts were wrong, or rather, they were right about what the ZF-41 couldn't do, but blind to what it could. It can't make 800-meter shots, can't compete with true sniper optics, can't deliver precision at extreme range. But it can keep ordinary soldiers alive in the mid-range hell where most infantry combat actually happens. And in a war of attrition, that matters more than perfection ever could. Division staff begin requesting more optics, not for snipers, for everyone. But doctrine moves with glacial slowness. Sniper schools maintain their position. Official channels resist. Traditional hierarchies hold firm. While they debate, the front keeps bleeding. A young soldier, fresh from training, crouches in a trench. His first day at the front. Soviet positions across the field. He guesses 250 meters, maybe more. His hands shake. His heart pounds. He's been told iron sights are sufficient. Told real soldiers don't need crutches. A veteran next to him has a ZF-41 mounted, against regulations, against doctrine. The veteran spots movement, raises his rifle, fires. A Soviet soldier falls at 290 meters. The young soldier fires at the same position. His shot goes wide by 2 meters. He never even saw the target clearly. The veteran glances at him, says nothing. But the message is clear. Doctrine doesn't stop bullets. Pride doesn't prevent death. And when the enemy can see you clearly at 300 meters, believing you don't need help is just a slow form of suicide. That night, the young soldier finds a ZF-41 in an abandoned pack. Someone who didn't survive. Someone who maybe didn't believe soon enough. He mounts it on his rifle, in secret, against orders. The next morning, when fog lifts and Soviet infantry advance, he sees them at 310 meters, sees them clearly enough to fire, sees them clearly enough to survive. In a war measured in meters and seconds, even the smallest advantage becomes the difference between a grave and a letter home. In 1943, a determined engineer in a field repair depot makes a decision that doctrine forbids. He's not a general, not a strategist, just a technician who's tired of returning broken rifles with dead men's blood still on them. He studies the ZF-41, examines the mounting system, realizes the problem isn't the optic, it's the placement. Standard mounting blocks the iron sights completely, forces soldiers to choose. Scope or irons, glass or metal, no middle ground. In combat, that choice kills. Close engagement erupts. Soldier needs irons for speed, but the scope blocks them. He fumbles, hesitates, dies. The engineer shifts the mounting position, moves it slightly forward on the Car 98K's receiver. 3 centimeters, a barely noticeable adjustment, but the effect changes everything. Soldiers can now keep their iron sights while gaining rapid mid-range alignment. No removal, no choice, no wasted seconds when bullets are already flying. Quick transitions become possible. Scan with irons. Spot a target. Drop to the scope. Fire. Back to irons, all in under 4 seconds. He modifies 20 rifles, sends them to the front, waits. 2 weeks later, field reports arrive. The modified system works. Soldiers request more. He modifies 200, Then 2,000. Word spreads through unofficial channels. Unit armorers replicate the modification. No official approval, no paperwork. Just survival-driven innovation spreading like wildfire. Training evolves around the modification. Selected infantrymen, designated sharpshooters, not snipers, receive accelerated instruction. 2 weeks, not the 6-month sniper courses, not elite selection, just focused, practical drill. They learn to exploit the ZF-41's long eye relief for quick target acquisition under stress, how to manage the narrow field of view with controlled sweeping movements, how to transition between magnified and unmagnified sight pictures without losing orientation. They learn to trust the glass when their instincts scream it's inadequate. An instructor demonstrates. Target at 280 meters. Iron sights first. What do you see? A shape. Maybe a man. Not sure. Scope. The soldier drops his eye to the ZF-41. A Soviet rifleman, kneeling, loading his weapon. Fire. The target falls. That's the difference. That 3-second window where you know and he doesn't. Use it. The training is brutal, efficient, stripped of everything except what keeps soldiers alive. No philosophy, no marksmanship theory, just repetitions until muscle memory overrides panic. At Kursk, July 1943, the largest battlefield in history becomes the proving ground. 3,000 tanks, 2 million men, artillery barrages that shake the earth for hours. In this mechanical apocalypse, the ZF-41 finds its purpose. Flanking units employ the optic to deliver suppressive fire at 250 to 400 meters, not precision sniper kills, not one-shot eliminations. Coordinated, rapid, aimed harassment that forces Soviet infantry to keep their heads down at ranges where German iron sights used to be ineffective. The effect cascades. Soviet spotters can't direct artillery. Machine gun teams can't establish fields of fire. Infantry can't maneuver freely. And behind this curtain of mid-range suppression, German armor advances. Panthers and Tigers roll forward while sharpshooters clear sight lines, eliminate observers, disrupt coordination, create gaps in Soviet defensive cohesion. The ZF-41 becomes a piece on the tactical chessboard, not the queen dominating the board, not the rook controlling entire files. A pawn, but promoted, placed strategically, multiplied across the board until quartery becomes quality. And the optic proves something unexpected. Resilience. High-power sniper scopes shatter under artillery concussion. Lenses crack in the cold. Mounting systems fail when rifles are dropped during desperate retreats. But the ZF-41 survives. It withstands mud that blinds precision optics, absorbs recoil that knocks delicate scopes off zero, tolerates hurried repositioning that would destroy fragile equipment. A soldier dives into a foxhole, artillery screaming, rifle slams against the earthen wall. He surfaces, checks the scope. Still aligned, still functional. It survives what precision cannot. The chaos, the rain, the reality of combat where equipment is dropped, thrown, dragged through hell. Piece by piece, it extends the vision of exhausted riflemen who have nothing else. A squad holds a trench. Dawn breaks. No man's land stretches ahead. Fog beginning to lift. The sharpshooter scans through his ZF-41. Slow sweeps, left to right, methodical. Movement, 280 meters, Soviet patrol, 6 men, moving toward the German line. With iron sights, he'd wait. Let them close to 150 meters. Risk them spotting his position first. Risk their grenades reaching his trench. With the optic, he sees them clearly, counts them, identifies the lead scout, calculates the moment. One shot. The scout falls. The patrol scatters, dives for cover. Their advance halts. 15 minutes wasted regrouping. 15 minutes of daylight burned. 15 minutes for German reinforcements to arrive. For machine guns to reposition. For artillery to zero coordinates. Time that wasn't available before a small circle of glass changed the tactical equation. Tactical commanders begin to understand the mathematics. One sniper watches one sector, elite, deadly, but alone. 10 sharpshooters watch 10 sectors, less skilled, less deadly individually, but covering 10 times the frontage, creating overlapping fields of observation and fire. The math shifts from quality to coverage. A battalion commander studies his map. Red marks indicate enemy positions. Blue marks his own lines. With snipers alone, he has 20 points of precision coverage across 5 kilometers. With sharpshooters equipped with ZF-41s, he has 200 points of adequate coverage across the same distance. The enemy can avoid 20 positions. They cannot avoid 200. The breakthrough isn't making soldiers better, it's making more soldiers good enough. But official doctrine hasn't caught up. Manuals still classify the ZF-41 as auxiliary equipment. Sniper schools still refuse to incorporate it into training. The institutional resistance creates a widening gap. In classrooms, instructors teach that proper marksmanship requires high-power optics and extensive training. In trenches, soldiers learn that survival requires whatever works and whoever has the will to use it. A young lieutenant arrives from officer training, fresh doctrine, textbook tactics. He sees his men using ZF-41s, frowns. These aren't approved for general issue. His sergeant, veteran of 2 years on the Eastern Front, responds quietly. No, sir, they're not. Then why are my men using them? The sergeant gestures toward the field. Because the men who didn't use them are buried out there. The lieutenant opens his mouth, closes it, says nothing. That night he requests ZF-41s for the rest of his platoon. Not because doctrine changed, because reality doesn't care about doctrine. A soldier crouches in morning twilight, cold seeping through his uniform, breath visible in the air. Soviet positions somewhere ahead. He scans through the ZF-41. The narrow view frustrates him. He has to sweep slowly, miss nothing. Then, there. Movement at 305 meters. A Soviet soldier emerging from a bunker. The German rifleman steadies his breathing. The modifications let him confirm target through the scope while keeping peripheral awareness through his irons. He knows his squad is watching, knows they're counting on him to spot threats before those threats spot them. He fires. The Soviet soldier drops. No one cheers, no one speaks. The squad just shifts position, continues waiting. Because this is what mid-range combat has become. Not heroic, not glorious. Just the grinding necessity of seeing slightly farther than the enemy, firing slightly sooner, surviving slightly longer. And when you multiply slightly by thousands of soldiers across hundreds of kilometers, those incremental advantages accumulate into something that changes the tactical reality of entire fronts. The ZF-41 doesn't win battles alone. It enables the men who do, extends their reach, sharpens their vision, gives them the tools to exploit the moments that determine who lives and who becomes a casualty statistic. In the calculus of attrition warfare, that's everything. Sometimes, the greatest innovations don't come from laboratories or academies. They come from exhausted men who simply need to see far enough to survive the next dawn. In 1943, triggers an unofficial break from doctrine. Field officers, defying sniper traditionalists, issue the ZF-41 widely to frontline squads, not to specialists, not to the chosen few, to ordinary riflemen who yesterday had only iron sights and prayer. It's a quiet rebellion, challenging entrenched hierarchies, breaking with institutional rigidity. Regimental commanders stop waiting for approval from above. They requisition optics directly, distribute them down to squad level, tell their men to figure it out. And the men do. A revelation follows, unexpected, profound. The inadequate 1.5 times magnification proves faster in chaotic engagements than high magnification systems, something high-power optics cannot match. In close quarters battle, 6 times magnification becomes a liability. Tunnel vision, slow target acquisition, death. But 1.5 times? It maintains peripheral awareness. Soldiers transition between scope and iron sights instantly. No scope shadow, no eye relief problems, no fumbling. The ZF-41 does something elite optics cannot. It adapts. In Normandy's hedgerows, June 1944, this advantage becomes lethal. Sharpshooters armed with ZF-41s disrupt Allied patrols at 250 to 300 meters. Allied forces advance through dense terrain, visibility limited to 30 meters. Then, suddenly, an opening, a field, 250 meters across. German sharpshooters, hidden in tree lines, equipped with ZF-41s, wait. American soldiers emerge into the clearing, moving fast, confident. The Germans don't engage at 250 meters. They wait. Let the patrol reach the center of the field. Then, coordinated fire. Not from snipers in distant hides, from multiple positions, multiple shooters, each with a tiny optic that lets them see just far enough. The patrol scatters, takes casualties, retreats. No single shot was masterful. No one soldier earned a medal. But together, they held ground, disrupted momentum, forced hesitation. A quiet truth emerges. A rejected tool, placed in ordinary hands, can shift the rhythm of entire battles. Not through individual brilliance, through collective enhancement, through making the average soldier slightly more lethal. And when you multiply slightly by thousands, it becomes overwhelming. Soviet reports begin noting a pattern. Enemy infantry demonstrates improved mid-range accuracy, source unknown. Allied intelligence struggles to explain German fire effectiveness at 300 meters. Iron sights can't account for it, but no sniper nests are found. The answer sits mounted on ordinary rifles, unnoticed, unspectacular. A 1.5 times scope that professional marksmen dismissed as worthless. But worthless to an expert isn't the same as worthless to everyone else. The ZF-41 doesn't make good soldiers great. It makes average soldiers good. And in a war of attrition, where divisions burn through replacements every month, that distinction matters. A young soldier, 3 weeks at the front, aims through the optic. His hands shake. He's never killed anyone, never even fired at a visible target. But through the glass, he sees them. Soviet infantry, 320 meters, moving toward his position. He steadies his breath, remembers his training. 2 weeks, not 2 years. He fires. The figure drops. He doesn't feel pride. doesn't feel horror, just cold certainty. He saw, he aimed, he fired. And tomorrow, he'll do it again. The most dangerous innovations aren't always the most powerful. Sometimes they're simply the ones that refuse to stay in the hands of specialists. Winter, 1944. Ardennes offensive. Fog settles thick over the forest. Visibility drops to 150 meters. Then, 100. Trees become ghosts in the white. German squads brace as American forces push through the snow. Counterattack building. Armor coming. A platoon of sharpshooters, men who 6 months ago were just riflemen, takes position along a ridgeline. Each soldier carries a Kar 98K. Each rifle mounts a ZF-41. They're not elite. They're cold, exhausted, low on ammunition. But they can see. The fog thins for a moment. American infantry emerge. 280 meters downslope, moving in formation. The German platoon leader raises his fist. Wait. The Americans advance. 250 meters. 230 meters. He drops his fist. 30 rifles fire as one. Not random, not panicked. Aimed shots. Each soldier tracking through his optic. Each trigger pull deliberate. The American formation staggers, takes casualties, halts. The sharpshooters reload. The fog rolls back in. Thick, blinding. For 5 minutes, nothing. Silence broken only by labored breathing and distant artillery. Then, the fog lifts again. Americans repositioning. 270 meters. The platoon fires again. Steady, disciplined, coordinated volleys that halt a critical counterattack at mid-range. The Americans pull back. Not because of devastating casualties, not because of superior tactics, because somewhere in the fog, they're being hit consistently at a range where they can barely see the tree line. The fight turns on visibility. Through a small circle of glass, soldiers steady their breathing and hold the line long enough for reinforcements to reach the front. The German sharpshooters hold for 3 hours. 30 men with small optics delaying a company-strength advance. Ammunition runs low. 5 rounds per man. Then 3. Then 1. Finally, reinforcements arrive. A panzer platoon. Infantry support. The ridge holds. The counterattack stalls. No heroic charges. No desperate last stands. Just 30 men who could see 100 meters farther than they should have been able to. And, in the fog and chaos of the Ardennes, that was enough. One soldier slumps against a tree after the battle, hands trembling, scope fogged with condensation. He wipes the lens carefully, inspects it for cracks. It's scratched, battered, but intact. He thinks about the faces he saw through that glass, brief glimpses. Human shapes at 250 meters, then nothing. He doesn't know if they lived, doesn't know their names. He only knows he saw them clearly enough to fire, and that clarity, however brief, kept him and his squad alive. Sometimes, survival isn't decided by who fires the most, but by who sees clearly enough to fire at all. As the ZF-41 spreads, expectations of ordinary riflemen shift. They're no longer ordinary. They're sharpshooters, designated marksmen. Soldiers expected to hit targets at 400 meters under pressure. The transformation happens quietly. No medals, no recognition, just a mounting realization that carrying the optic means carrying responsibility. Every shot visible to the squad, every miss noted, every hesitation questioned. Some soldiers embrace it, find pride in the precision, the discipline. Others carry deep psychological weight. Memories formed through that narrow lens. Faces glimpsed only for a second. Targets that became bodies. Strangers whose final moments existed only in a small circle of magnified glass. Haunting their quiet moments. Dreams where the scope remains pressed to their eye even after waking. One soldier keeps a journal, never publishes it, writes only 3 lines about the optic. I saw him clearly. I wish I hadn't. I see him still. Elite snipers adapt reluctantly. Some accept the reality. The ZF-41 isn't competition. It's force multiplication. Their role shifts from lone wolf to coordinator. They guide sharpshooters, designate targets, manage overlapping fields of fire. Others resist, cling to tradition, insist that precision must remain the domain of specialists. But the battlefield slowly transforms into one of distributed precision. One scope, one soldier at a time. The battlefield cares nothing for tradition. Rifles return to armories scratched, fogged, and battered. Scopes bent. Lenses cracked. Silent artifacts of how far a soldier's reach was extended. They're cleaned, cataloged, stored in wooden crates. One armorer inspects a ZF-41 pulled from a rifle turned in by a surrendering unit. The metal is pitted with rust, the optics housing dented, but the lens, miraculously, remains clear. He looks through it, sees the far wall of the armory magnified slightly, just 1.5 times, barely noticeable. He wonders how many men lived because of this small enhancement. How many died. He marks the serial number in his ledger, locks it away. The rifles go silent, but the lessons remain. Victory and defeat are measured in grand strategies and massive battles, but survival is often decided by something as small as seeing 3 seconds sooner. By 1945, more than 100,000 ZF-41 optics leave their imprint across German doctrine. Germany collapses, equipment scatters. But the concept survives into the Cold War, shaping the modern designated marksman role, a bridge between infantry and snipers. Post-war analysis reveals the pattern. Allied intelligence officers study captured rifles, interview prisoners, piece together the puzzle of German mid-range accuracy. The reports are surprising. Not elite snipers, not specialized units, ordinary infantrymen with low-power optics. The implications spread. The Soviet Union takes note, begins developing variants with integrated optics, not for snipers, for line troops. The United States examines its own doctrine. Marines in the Pacific already experimented with scoped M1 Garans. The ZF-41's success validates the approach. By the 1950s, the designated marksman role emerges formally. Not sniper, not rifleman, something in between. One optic per squad. A soldier trained to bridge the gap, to extend the squad's reach without requiring years of sniper school. The ZF-41's blueprint echoes through Korea, Vietnam, every modern conflict. Low-power optics become foundational to scout rifles and modular combat systems worldwide. The ACOG, the LCAN, red dots, holographic sights. Every modern infantry rifle leaves the factory with mounting rails. Optical enhancement is no longer specialized. It's standard. A flawed innovation, built for mass deployment, quietly sketches the blueprint for 21st century infantry marksmanship. The principle proved by a dismissed innovation in 1941 becomes doctrine by 2000. Every soldier deserves to see clearly. Magnification isn't luxury, it's necessity. Scout rifles, modular combat systems, designated marksman rifles. all descendants of a tiny 1.5x scope that professional snipers called worthless. Military training evolves. Marksmanship standards increase. What once required a specialist now requires every rifleman. The bar rises, expectations shift. A soldier firing blind beyond 200 meters becomes unacceptable. But with that enhanced lethality comes enhanced burden. Every war since 1945 produces veterans who carry memories formed through magnified optics, faces seen clearly before the trigger pull, details that iron sights would have blurred into abstraction. The technology that saves lives also sharpens the memories that haunt them. Progress and cost, inseparable. In 2024, a military historian examines a ZF-41 in a museum collection, holds it up to the light, looks through the scratched lens. 1.5 times magnification, barely noticeable to the naked eye, but enough to change everything. Not every revolution arrives with thunder. Some arrive quietly, magnifying the world just enough to rewrite the rules of survival. The ZF-41 was never meant to be a masterpiece. It was born from necessity, refined under fire, dismissed by experts, embraced by the desperate. It didn't win the war, didn't turn the tide, didn't earn headlines or inspire legends. It simply made ordinary soldiers slightly more lethal. And when you multiply slightly across hundreds of thousands of rifles, across millions of trigger pulls, the cumulative effect reshapes battlefield. In the collapse of a fading regime, the ZF-41 reveals a stark lesson. Not every innovation begins with brilliance. Some are born from necessity and refined under fire. Yet, every tool that extends human capability in war also extends the shadows that follow, reminding us that progress and loss often walk the same uneasy path through history. A young soldier in 1944 saw a face at 300 meters, saw it clearly, fired, watched it fall. That memory stayed with him until 1987, 43 years. Clear as the day he looked through the glass, he never learned the name, never knew if there was a family, a home, a future erased in the time it takes to exhale. Just a figure in a small circle of magnification, human for a second, then gone. This is the paradox of progress. The tools we create to protect ourselves inevitably become the tools that haunt us. The ZF-41 saved lives, took lives, extended the war, shortened engagements, multiplied lethality, burdened memories. It was all of these things simultaneously, without contradiction. And in that complexity lies the true legacy. Not the technical specifications or production numbers, but the reminder that every advancement in our capacity to see farther, aim truer, and kill more efficiently comes with a cost measured not in steel or strategy, but in the quiet weight carried by those who looked through the glass and saw too clearly, leaving echoes of quiet sorrow. Sometimes the most dangerous inventions aren't the ones that change everything. They're the ones that change just enough, extending our reach while deepening the shadows we can never escape, leaving us to wonder if seeing more clearly was ever truly a gift, or simply a clearer view of the darkness we create. If this story moved you or made you think differently about the tools that shaped history, share it with someone who appreciates the weight of innovation. Because understanding the past isn't just about what was won or lost, but about what we carry forward.